We are back with Joshy P's Street Punk Hour, and with me now I have Brian Bush. Why don't you tell me, for starters, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Brian Bush.
Alright, there's a reason why I brought you here. Why don't you explain what you do? You are the editor, publisher, creator, what have you, of Layers Magazine. What exactly is Layers Magazine?
Layers Magazine was started in the fall of 2001. I'm the publisher. I pretty much handle everything related to Layers Magazine. I started it, it's kind of a grim story, but I was in a bad spot in 2001, and I had a shitload of art and material, literature, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, graphic design, some band interviews that were just laying around, and I wanted to put that stuff out. It's kind of like a last legacy type of deal, you know, if you want to, tap into my frame of mind at that point in time. So I put out the first issue. It took me about 6 months to complete, and once it was completed, I was so impressed with the work, impressed with the final product. I'm like, man, I'm going to do a second one. Second one came into a third one went into a fourth one, and so on and therefore.
Yeah, it's definitely not your average zine. I mean, I've seen, obviously, plenty of copies. It's pretty well done and intricate and everything else. Why did you start the magazine? What exactly is your mindset behind all this? What do you get out of this?
Well, what I got on the first issue was just, getting my own personal work out. I was submitting, work to other magazines and, publishers and whatnot, and I was sick of waiting for letters back, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to put this shit out myself, I came from a DIY kind of punk rock background where, I appreciated and respected that work ethic, and I just put my shit out myself. I was like, fuck hearing back from a publisher or another magazine. I mean, my work has been published in other magazines, other zines and stuff like that, but, I just put stuff out myself, and, after I got through that first issue and realized how much I enjoyed putting out that material, I started focusing on other subject matter, bands, interviewing bands, getting other people's work out, I kind of treated it as like an outlet for other people's work. I decided taking contributions from other writers and poets and graphic designers and artists and painters and photographers, and so I kind of started treating Layers, as sort of an outlet for other artists and creative individuals.
Very cool. Now, what's the process like to make the magazine and then distribute it? Is it a pretty long process? What all goes into it?
Yeah, you know what? I initially wanted to put out an issue every 6 months, but it just kept getting backlogged just because of the amount of work it took. But I was conducting all the interviews myself, getting press passes for all kinds of art shows and punk shows and hardcore shows, and interviewing the bands, and I transcribed the interviews, and I would do the layout. I'm primarily mostly interested in graphic design, so that was another outlet for it. But yeah, when it came down to printing, I have an outdated LaserJet printer. That's how I get the aesthetic. I print on 110-pound cardstock, and I lay it out in Photoshop and Quark and Illustrator. So yeah, I took care of all the printing and all the distribution. I didn't have a distributor. I distributed it all myself, so everything was on a consignment basis.
Cool. Now, someone that doesn't know about the magazine, what is the basic premise behind Layers Magazine? If someone's going to pick up a copy of this magazine, is it just a punk rock zine, or what exactly are they going to get out of this magazine?
I actually titled it Layers because, it revolved on so much different subject matter, but yeah, essentially it's a punk rock magazine / zine, whatever you want to call it. It focused on music, and I had a lot of social issues and politics involved with the articles and the interviews I did, so I would definitely consider it a political and a social magazine. Featured a lot of photography and, cutting-edge graphic design. If I, want to be so egotistical, I was, proud of my design work. So just basically, politics, punk rock, social issues, art, photography, sex. I did interview some porn stars for a couple of features. Skateboarding, anything underground, whatever. I mean, I kept it independent and underground and focused mostly on the independent artists and shit like that.
Out of the couple of years you've been doing this, what were your favorite bands you interviewed, and what were some of the highlights of doing this whole thing, this magazine that you do?
Definitely the highlights would be meeting and interviewing in depth every single band or person I could ever imagine or want to meet. Every punk rock band I've ever looked up to because of their lyrics, because of their sound. People that just have inspired me and got me through bad days. I've got to, hang out with them motherfuckers, fucking pick their brain, and, fucking chill with them. But I think my most memorable interview would be with Nathan great. Boy Sets Fire. It took place at the Metro in a dressing room. It was just like a free-for-all political discussion, man. But, I was basically, it started out, I was fucking with them. I wanted to, because Boy Sets Fire prides themselves in being a socially aware band and a socialist band and a semi-communist band. And I, just wanted to, to see if they knew what they were talking about. But it turned into like an aggressive free-for-all interview. It was fucking good, man. And it ended up being like 2 hours long. It probably ended up being like 7 pages long, and when the layout was finished. And that interview actually got published by a magazine in Amsterdam. Besides that, I did a lot of interviews with porn stars. I used to do all my interviews at the Admiral Theater. I had a relationship with the head of promotions over there, servicing the time a porn star came through. I just made it a point to get together with them. I interviewed Ron Jeremy a few times, Brianna Banks, Raylene, and shows that may sound, interviewing a porn star in a socially aware magazine. I never took a shallow approach. It was always personal questions. I asked questions that porn stars weren't usually you couldn't ask. A lot of interviews I did with porn stars would be like, what's your favorite position? Do you do anal? Do you like fucking swallow and cum? Whatever. But I would kind of take the approach of like, tell me about your childhood. Were you abused? I know the typical question is, you must have been abused, sexually abused to go in this industry. And some of them were, some of them didn't want to talk about it. That's the key to a good interview. Fucking asking the hard questions. So the highlights would just be basically meeting and having the opportunities to meet the people I've met and interview the people I've met. I've been a lucky guy, and I appreciate all the time people allowed me to have with them. So that's my highlight.
Definitely, yeah. I like getting started with this interview shit. So it's basically I'm talking to a legend right now. You've seen and heard from them all. So
Yep.
Now, all that aside, what do you see laying in the future for Layers Magazine? You gonna keep publishing it, or you got anything in mind right now? What's going on?
What's going on with Layers Magazine? We have a lost issue coming out. It's completely laid out. I think it averages at like 200 pages, complete with advertising. Which I gotta apologize to the advertisers. I think I spent all the advertising money on fucking drugs. But I got sidetracked. It's bullshit. I've been working at a strip club for the last 2 years and had a little hard drug problem. And but I can talk about it now because I'm clean.
Good for you.
Yeah, don't do drugs, man. They'll take away all your motivation. They'll kill you. Trust me. But I got a lost issue coming out, and I still continue to do the pocketbook series on a regular basis. It's about 4 by 4 inches in size, and it's on a much smaller scale than the original Layers. The original Layers was 8.5 by 11 standard magazine size, 200 pages, 5 pounds in weight, blah blah blah. But these Layers magazine pocketbook series they're easier to get out on a regular basis. I don't do any advertising involved, so I don't give a fuck about a deadline. And it just focuses on one piece of subject matter, whether it's one interview with one band or a story by a writer or poetry, or artwork or whatever the fuck. So those come out on a regular basis, and I'm still doing that on a regular basis. Like I said, the original format of Layers was no longer a production as a result of me getting sidetracked and filing bankruptcy for the whole fucking thing in the end. But yeah, so the future of Layers Magazine, I'm gonna still put out the pocketbook series. I've actually been contemplating launching an entirely new magazine. My experience of starting my own magazine, I know every angle when it comes to dealing with photographers and writers and how to generate money through advertising sales. So I've been kind of contemplating launching an entirely new project, separate from Layers and whatnot.
Now, what if people want to hear about Layers, what we've been talking about? How could people get their hands on a copy of Layers, a back issue? Can they do that, or how can they find out more about your magazine?
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of back issues still sitting in my closet. Just go to MySpace, go to myspace.com/Layers Magazine, or else just go to Google and type in Brian Bush or Layers Magazine. It'll take you to my page, and it'll take you to some fucking shit. Just give me your address, I'll send it out for free. I never did it for the money. I'm still not doing it for the money. I got shit sitting around, so I'll send it to you. If you're interested, no big deal. If not, whatever.
Cool. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, this is not your typical local zine printed on copy paper. This is, what did you say the size of it was?
Yeah, 8.5 by 11. I fucked with sizes. One of them is laid out horizontally. It's 8.5 by 11 horizontally, and then I did the standard 8.5 by 11, vertical. And the fucker weighs weighs like 5 pounds,
Yeah.
on 180-pound cardstock, and it's got its own aesthetic to it. So a lot of people refer to it as a coffee table book as opposed to a magazine or a zine.
The issues I've seen are definitely more like a book, 200 pages. The quality is amazing. And once again, I want to thank you for coming in. Again, that MySpace address is myspace.com/layersmagazine, or just Google his name. His name is Brian Bush. He's been doing this for many years. It's a great magazine. I want to thank you once again, Brian, for coming in and doing this interview. I really appreciate it.